and welcome to the Canadian Football Countdown. I'm Ryan Coop here alongside Michael Garrell and Trey Colbeck. Welcome one and all to our live Week 5 recap show here on the Canadian Football Countdown. Tonight, we'll touch on a bunch of breaking news around the CFL, talk through each of the 3 games this past weekend, give our players of the week, update our power rankings, and more. And of course, take your comments and questions in the chat throughout the night as well. We're live, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and the Game Time TV YouTube page, all made possible by our presenting sponsors, Game Time TV. Learn more at facebook.com/GameTimeTVMB. Hello, one and all, everybody catching this live, everybody listening after the fact. Happy to have you here with us. Before I bring in the rest of the panel, I do want to mention we are a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network, and as always, want to acknowledge that the Canadian Football Countdown is brought to you from Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation, as well as from Treaty 4 territory, traditional territory of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis Nation. Now let's introduce the rest of the panel here tonight. First, in the middle here, it's the great Michael Garrell. Mike, how you doing tonight?
Not too shabby, guys. Lots of news to get to, but we can confirm one thing. This will not be a 4-hour podcast. Sorry to disappoint.
I don't know. We'll see what the runtime is like by the time we get to the end of this here. We have a last-minute lineup change. If you followed us on Twitter at CF Countdown Pod, you would have thought, where's Adam here tonight? Well, didn't have great cell service, so Trey was supposed to get the night off for 1-game suspension this week for going 0-3 on his picks last week. Resident betting expert, rough go for him, but has appealed the suspension and comes in off the bench here tonight. Trey, how you doing tonight?
Oh, there's the mute button. I'm doing fantastic. Brian in the chat, I'm sorry, man. I don't own any other hat. The only other hat I own is this one. So I'm going to wear my Sexy Stables hat for the next hour, boys, if that's okay. Because Brian doesn't like the bomber hat. And let's see here. We got some vanilla ice cream, boys and girls. Oh my God, Marcus Sales. You don't put up comments like that, man. You're gonna have to.
Amazing. This may be the best intro we've ever had into the podcast. Happy to have you both here tonight and everybody joining us in the chat as well for our Week 5 CFL recap. But first, we've got some breaking news to get to off the top of the show here. A couple big items coming out this week. Mike, what do we got here for breaking news in the start of Week 6?
Well, I'm going to give them item by item, and then we will discuss them because they kind of go, not kind of together, but this is one of those where you think you have the outline pounded together, and all head breaks loose in the last couple of hours before the show. So we adapt, and we will adapt, and we will be team players about this. So the first set of breaking news, Saskatchewan Rough Riders player Garrett Marino has been suspended 4 games for conduct during the Week 5 game versus the Ottawa Red Blacks. So that was last week. We'll get to that in just a second. The other source of breaking news is that, and it kind of piggybacks off of this, the Ottawa Red Blacks have acquired Nick Arbuckle from the Edmonton Elks in exchange for a 2023 4th-round pick. Let's quickly pivot back to the ice cream. It just made my night. I knew it was coming, but hey, it's even better in person. Anyway, that being said, the Garrett Marino suspension, I decided before we get to the panel to weigh in is just to read this out, just so there's no misunderstanding or misconception. The CFL has totaled Garrett Marino's suspension for a total of 4 games on 3 separate suspensions. A 2-game suspension for Marino dangerous and reckless low hit on Ottawa quarterback Jeremiah Mazzoli on play 123, which was that play with 5 minutes left in the game, resulted in serious injury and Marino's ejection from the game, and for Marino's subsequent celebration. A one-game suspension for verbal comments Marino made about Mazzoli's heritage during the game, which clearly violates the code of conduct. A one-game suspension for Marino's illegal and reckless tackle of an Ottawa offensive lineman on the previous play. The league has also cited Marino's discipline record after 12 games, which includes a previous ejection and 2 fines for his manner of play. This behavior had no place in our league. Randy Ambrosi, commissioner of the CFL. This discipline is intended to send a strong message that it will not be tolerated. Now, I know we took a little bit more time on that than probably wanted to, but I think it's important that we lay out the facts that this is not just one isolated incident of 4 games. So, the initial thoughts from both of you. Ryan, we'll start with you on this one. Your thoughts on the 4-game suspension for Garrett Marino?
Yeah, I was surprised to see it be 4 games. I feel like just track record history, I was setting myself up for disappointment to, come out, see a 1-game, a 2-game suspension here for Marino for this incident is kind of what I was expecting to see out of it. Then we get the 4 games, which the same, announcement from the CFL mentions the most severe total discipline ever imposed for in-game behavior during 1 game. Note the in-game portion of it. It doesn't count the Chris Edwards of the Argos last season after that East final with the Ticats. I love that they break it down into, okay, it's 2 games for this, it's 1 game for that, it's 1 game for that. I'm very happy to see Marino suspended for 4 games, especially for all of these. Personally, I would have liked to see more for it, as it was a couple reckless plays. It was, you question the motive a little bit there, maybe when he's celebrating as he's walking off the field for this. It's not like he's upset that he got ejected because he thinks this was a legitimate hit. No, he knows what he did, and he's celebrating as he goes off the field. And then you take into account the verbal comments about Mazzoli's heritage and that. Like, there's no place for that in football. There's no place for negative comments towards anybody's heritage in life at all. So very disappointed in Marino's actions in this one. Happy to see him suspended for 4 games. Would have liked it to be a little bit more. Trey, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. Again, I was surprised he got 4. Thought it was going to be less, and it's nice to see the CFL came down with somewhat of a hammer and being the longest suspension for in-game play. Yeah, I again think he deserves more just based off the verbal comments part. And again, heritage is such a gray area. Like, yeah, it's such a gray area because heritage is not far from race. So what's the difference between, I don't know what the proper word is, anti-heritagism and racism, right? Like, I don't know where that line is. And I believe Mazzoli is Hawaiian or something like Polynesian or something like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not trying to, whatever. But still, again, it does no place in the football. It doesn't matter if you're white, black, Asian, anything, right? So keep that stuff off the field. And yeah, and I think we have a comment from somebody about the can the CFL PA contest this suspension. I think that's really interesting because, again, that heritage line, if it said racist, I bet the CFLPA would have nothing to do with it. So it might be an interesting play here. But back to you, Mike.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting here because, this is, and I think I said this in the group chat earlier, this is not written, I don't think, without the direction or guidance of a lawyer. This is it seems to be legal people involved in the writing of this carefully worded statement. I find it interesting that they have found a way to differentiate this suspension, and they didn't say it's 4 games for the hit. It's the totality of previous actions in this game. Now, that to me is very interesting, and I'm glad they made this is the perfectly written statement in my mind, as far as because you're not saying, oh, it's 4 games, because everybody would be going, okay, 4 games. They went into explanation and said 2 games for this, 1 game for that, 1 game for that. Job well done. As far as an appeal goes, doesn't say that the suspension is not appealable, which is interesting. So I'm presuming that all of the regular appeal rules will apply, um, unless I'm told otherwise. But I have not received any confirmation of that either way. I also wonder too if they set this at 4, knowing that an appeal could be coming and this suspension could be reduced. Whether it should be reduced is up for a large portion of debate here. The CFL has clearly set the precedent in my mind that this is a historic suspension or the longest for in-game action. Um, I think, guys, we're entering 2022 era of Canadian Football League discipline, and let's see what happens. It's 4 games. To be honest with you, I'm not sure how you have the grounds of an appeal and how that would look amongst the public eye. That's not for me to debate. Um, but I'm just wondering here if there was some kind of guidance from the CFLPA and the CFL to kind of put their heads together here. I cannot personally see the CFL making a unilateral decision. My guess, and it's only a guess, based on what I know of these things from my line of work, which again is entirely different. I would not be shocked if the CFLPA had some consultation in this. Um, and then we'll see if there's an appeal because I don't know. To me, this almost screams okay, 4, and we prepare for a appeal because nobody's gonna look at if this is a 2-game suspension and he appeals it and it gets down to 1. We should mention as well, this is going to be separate from any discipline that the riders issue on the play. Craig Dickinson has said that already multiple times, including on the post-game show, that if the CFL, and again, I'm paraphrasing on that on this, but if the CFL didn't do anything, that the riders would be handling this internally. I think was the line right after the game. So I don't know. I really don't know. Like, we don't have a precedent ever for a one play on the football field leading to a 4-game suspension. So new territory. Um, for those that say it should be longer, yeah, you run yourself into a lot of legal trouble. I think if you make this any longer, and we'll see. We'll see. My hope is that this does not get appealed because I think this is, I shouldn't say that. It opens up a can of worms no matter what way you slice this. Too long, too short, happy medium. We'll tell. We'll be able to tell here in the next couple days. Yeah, and again, apparently there was, and I'm just reading the comment here from Brian. It sounds like there was some discussion in the media already that the rioters had suspended him for a game and fined him. So and this came down obviously before the CFL, announcement. So it's interesting, and I truly hope that this is a new era in CFL discipline, and that this is where it stops. And I think the only way it stops is if this is a lengthy suspension. And I think 4, as much as people want it longer, um, to me, I think this should get the attention of the players entirely. that this type of action would not be tolerated, whether it's a Blue Bomber, whether it's a Rider, whether it's a Red Black, whether it's an Edmonton player, whether it's a Calgary player. The CFL has made it abundantly clear. Those actions on the football field do not belong on the football field and or in life in general. So it's going to be very interesting how this comes to pass.
I just want to jump in here because we did get a comment in the chat also from Brian here saying Marino deserved that, but what about Boyd? Yeah, there were a couple plays in this game that were, rough hits, dirty hits potentially here. I think it's, they're two separate entities. Do I think, if Boyd threw a dirty hit there, like it seemed like, should he get suspended as well? Yeah, probably. I would not disagree with that one bit, that a suspension would be worthy for a dirty hit of that case as well. Does one suspension, one hit, equal the other in this case? I'm not so sure necessarily, but obviously a couple big hits here, rough plays. Pete Robertson of the Riders going down with a big injury from that one, I believe, as well. So ugly side of the football game here that we saw a little bit out of this one, but we will see if any further discipline comes down for that as well. And some bad blood between those teams as the game ended there on that one. Let's talk about the other big news here as well. You mentioned it already, Mike, the trade of Nick Arbuckle to the Ottawa Red Blacks. I guess we should mention as part of that Jeremiah Mazzoli is out, 10 to 12 weeks, I think it was, after that injury. So just awful to see for Mazzoli, who came over to Ottawa and was trying to rejuvenate that team a little bit. But now they bring in Nick Arbuckle, and the Nick Arbuckle roller coaster continues. What do you guys make of this from both sides? Mike?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, the writing was on the wall the day Chris Jones came into Edmonton. He didn't seem to really like Nick Arbuckle. He seemed to go way out of his way to bring in quarterbacks. If that doesn't send a message that I don't think you're the guy here, I don't know what is. I mean, it was just a matter of finding the right pit. I think they settled on a 4th-round pick just to as adequate compensation, as we seem to have lost Trey there for a moment. But no, I think this was a long time coming, and I think with how short of a leash Nick Arbuckle got on during his time to play this year, it's proven to be the fact that he was not in the Red Blacks plans, or in the Elks plans, pardon me. And this might be one team with a need showing another need, and it sounds like he's going to be in practice tomorrow already. Trey, welcome back.
Yeah, hit the wrong button, boys. Hit the wrong button. I was trying to find a new tab, and it disappeared, and I hit Leave Studio. But yeah, interesting.
So, quick question. Do we blame the ice cream man for your technical difficulties?
Yeah, my hands are a little sticky now, boys. All that chocolate sauce. But yeah, our Nick Arbuckle trade. Yeah, we all know Chris Jones had a thing against Arbuckle, it seemed like, from day one. The opportunity arose in Ottawa, and unfortunately arose in Ottawa. And, we're going to see Nick Arbuckle, I think, win more games in Ottawa than he would have in Edmonton, maybe, because, he would have been the backup anyway. Or we don't know what Edmonton's going to do now with Trey Ford seems to be injured and all those other guys. So, yeah, I think it's hopefully it's a good move for Arbuckle, and wish him the best there. So that's all. Yeah, it's kind of a weird trade. I'm not a fan. I don't know. I think the Canadian draft picks are a little overvalued or undervalued. I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing to be like, a starting quarterback's worth a 4th-round Canadian, and is that just how much Chris Jones didn't like him, or is that what the market is, right? But we could have a whole show about that as well. So I'm on to the next thing. It's okay. Nick Arbuckle's Nick Arbuckle. He's going to get traded probably next year.
The poor guy has now been traded 3 straight seasons and basically is ending up exactly where he was at the start of the pandemic in 2020 after he signed with the Red Blacks, never played for them, went over to Toronto, had a good camp there, lost the job to McLeod Bethel Thompson, gets traded over to Edmonton. They don't play him at all last season after he gets there, gets his contract restructured. They bring in 18 and a half quarterbacks in training camp. He wins the job from them somehow, but you can clearly tell the entire time that Chris Jones is finding any excuse to pull him. Which we saw even this week after Trey Ford went down. Arbuckle started playing a little bit, and then Kyle Oxley, who was playing great at wide receiver, came in and took over at quarterback. And now we already know Taylor Cornelius is going to start this week for Edmonton. So it was very clear to me that Arbuckle was not favored there by Chris Jones and his crew. He's had a rough couple of years for a guy who showed such promise as Calgary's backup there. And now he gets to go over to Ottawa, and I just hope he finds a home there. I hope he gets a chance to succeed. I think the, play style there in Ottawa might fit him a little bit more than what Chris Jones' style was here. And not really surprised. You mentioned the 4th-round pick there, Trey. I almost feel like this was the case of everybody knew that Chris Jones had no plans to use him as a starter going forward, and maybe that if there were no takers, we would end up with Arbuckle being released as a cap liability of some kind here. So maybe, Ottawa's like, here, you want a 4th-round pick? We'll take over Nick Arbuckle for that, get the first shot at him here. So, I like the move for Ottawa to bring him in. It's the first thing I thought of as soon as Jeremiah Mazzoli went down. But Mike, what do you think here? We've got a question in the Facebook chat from Tim Capper who says, so with Edmonton down a quarterback, do they sign a free agent, potentially trade for a starter like Vernon Adams? There's been some talk of that. What do you like? What do you make of this side for Edmonton?
Yeah, this to me, Ryan, is interesting because if we could leave Tim's comment on there, because just for a minute, because I think that's very, very important to this discussion. It's interesting to me, guys. We're how long in? This is the Week 5 preview show?
Recap.
Yeah,
Week
this
5
is the Week
recap,
5 preview show. How much the quarterback market has changed in the CFL in 5 weeks or 4-game weeks. We were not that far removed, guys, from considering that Vernon Adams was a MOP candidate, one of the best quarterbacks in the East. And now all of a sudden, he's struggling to hold his job. And we're hearing through the grapevine in Montreal that they're likely to stay with Trevor Harris at quarterback, which, I don't know, it's just mind-blowing in itself. Never mind the thoughts on last Wednesday's show about the whole coaching change. But to me, it sounds like, now, again, the injury kind of clouds everything, but it sounds like to me that Trey Ford did enough to at least consider them moving on from Nick Arbuckle, and now they're going to a quarterback that's been scratched for the first 4 weeks of the season as their number 1 quarterback. I also wonder if there's a bigger play in here. If they don't realize that with the way the West is going, well, the ship is sailing on their season pretty quickly when you look at the West Division standings. If this is not asset control, asset management, and perhaps we look at a Trey Ford being number 1, even that, I think, seems rather interesting, because do you really want Trey Ford coming back in as your future quarterback off a shoulder injury and potentially a 1-8 or a 2-7 record? Like, does that defeat the purpose, or are you better shutting down Trey Ford, letting him get healthy, assuming his shoulder isn't back to normal, and it's not a serious injury? Like, now you have to wonder about the long-term play. Do you think that, I know I'm rambling on here, but do you think Trey Ford is your number 1? Do you protect them from the standpoint of you coming back? You're probably out of the playoff race or close to it by the time he comes back. Do you see what else you have on the roster in Taylor Cornelius? And then bring in quarterback, maybe Vernon Adams or maybe Trevor Harris, which to me, it just seems completely not right from what we talked about. Not right, but it's completely mind blowing what we talked about coming into the season. And I think this much is clear to summarize what I'm saying. Trey Ford made enough of an impression to be considered the number one long term in Edmonton. Whether he remains to be the number one this year, we'll see coming off the shoulder injury. And this screams audition to me as to who is that quarterback behind Trey Ford or who is on the depth chart with Trey Ford. Because, hey, you know what? That third stringer last week also got injured. Whose name escapes me at the minute.
Kyle Oxley was the played wide receiver, came in at quarterback.
Yeah.
Sounds like he's back at practice this week, but practicing with the wide receivers again because Cornelius gets the
It's
start.
interesting, right? Because it almost screams to you like Taylor Cornelius, and then, like I said in the group chat, Cornelius, die. Who is that guy?
Maybe it's Deron Carter. He's back at practice.
It is, but there was a lot of questions, and I think for once, we finally figured out that it is Cornelius potentially getting this chance. Actually, we know it is for sure. Getting getting a chance to audition for potentially job 1 or job 2, assuming Trey Ford comes back. And yeah, we'll discuss my fantasy impacts of that game later on.
I guess my question is if Arbuckle's a 4th round draft pick, what's Vernon Adams? Right? Because you're talking about the Edmonton season's done. Are you willing to sell the farm for Vernon Adams if your season's kind of over? Right? That's my kind of question. If you're saying if you want to shut down Trey Ford for the year, I would say that the season's over. So there's no point in trading a second or a third or whatever it is, a high prospect for Vernon Adams, right? So that was my question. I got to you guys because I think if the season's over, or that's what Edmonton's focusing on. Whatever you guys think.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because with the way the rest of the West Division is playing, it's tough for Edmonton. It's going to be tough for Edmonton to get back into this no matter what. I don't know if I'm necessarily putting the weight of the world on Trey Ford's, injured shoulder here when he comes back and throwing him to the Wolves here in the Chris Jones Funhouse, so to say, here this season necessarily. But I agree. I think he's the quarterback of the future for the team. Who's the guy in the meantime? Will remain to be seen, and I wouldn't be surprised if it changes every single week. Should we get into talking about the games that happened this past weekend? Let's start off with the first one here. Well, we were just talking about them. So Calgary Stampeders beating the Elks 49-6. Mike, take it away.
Yeah, this is a very interesting game. It featured about a 59-minute weather delay in the third quarter, which was interesting. But again, just to give a little bit of a recap, Trey Ford had a very good opening drive, went 2 for 3, had one long pass. I think he finished with mid-50s in passing yards before leaving. And then he got injured, and it just seemed like that was kind of the momentum shifter in the game. It seemed like he left, and then it was like all the air got left out of the Edmonton balloon. Suddenly, they forgot to play defense, and Bo Levi Mitchell looked like the Bo Levi Mitchell MOP of 2019 and 2018, etc., etc. But I think this speech, guys, and we can kind of touch on this. The results for me for Edmonton are kind of what you would expect from a team in search of consistency, from a team that's looking to set their core. And it's very inconsistent. One week they look like, okay, yeah, they look like they're about to do something. And then the next week something happens, and they're very fragile when it comes to something happening. And as a Bomber fan, speaking from experience, I know what that's like. It's not fun. But you know what? Again, bears repeating, but it's going to get better with Chris Jones. He has his track record of year 2 and onward being much more successful. But I'm wondering, guys, who does this speak? What do we make of Calgary here? I mean, they're coming here to Winnipeg, not to get into the preview part of it, because that's for Wednesday night. But 2 wins over the Elks. They're unbeaten, 4-0, and I think they're 4-0. Yeah, 4-0, and 5-0, taking on the 5-0 Blue Bombers. We've seen Calgary look so good, and yet have two close wins as well, where they had to fight their way for the victory. Have we learned what Calgary is as far as getting in all facet points from every aspect of their team, defense, offense, special teams? Or are we of the mindset that we need to wait till they play Saskatchewan? They need to wait till they play BC. Like, when we talked about resumes as far as this undefeated season goes, how do you stack up Calgary's resume as far as legitimacy for the top in the West, despite being only 5 games in? I don't know, Ryan. Does my question make sense?
Yeah, I think Calgary doesn't get enough credit for being undefeated at this point of the season. Like, everybody was talking about BC until this week. Everybody's talking about Winnipeg. I put Calgary right in the same category as Winnipeg, and I'm very excited for the game coming up this week because it's 2 teams that are undefeated, had some close ones that they gutted out victories, which good football teams do, and they've had some dominant wins there along the way as well. I like what we're seeing from Calgary in all facets right now. Bo Levi Mitchell seems to be on his game. I wouldn't say he's necessarily lighting it up like the Bo numbers of the past, massive numbers, but he's producing very well. He's putting up a Zach Collaros-like games pretty much, and that's seemingly effective, especially when your run game. They had 150 yards rushing throughout the game this week as well. Defense chipped in a lot. Cam Judge was huge in this one. The return game, you had Peyton Logan, 122-yard missed field goal return touchdown. Things are rolling for Calgary right now. We've got a good comment here in the chat from Hussey's Huddle that says, I think what's scary about Calgary is that they haven't really got Bagleton going yet. There's a super well-rounded team, can run the ball, good offensive line, defense is solid, coaching staff is always great. Yeah, I'm high on what I've seen from Calgary lately. What do you think, Trey?
Oh, sorry, I hit the wrong button, boys. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this game this weekend too, but I've never been high on Calgary, but I'm going to have to start getting high on Calgary. Bo Levi is doing what he does best, right? And the funny thing is, he's not throwing for 300 yards, and he's only throwing 22 passes, and they're still getting wins. That makes Calgary even more dangerous, and that they can run the ball. What's my keys? Run the ball and make field goals. And other than make one miss, I think it was a miss that ended a streak. Paredes makes field goals, and they run the ball, and Bo Levi has the arm to do the rest. So as a better, I'm really interested in what this line's going to be on Wednesday when we talk about it and going into Friday night, because I could see Calgary be favored, and yeah, Winnipeg's defense might be better, but also I think Calgary's had more games this year that they've been offensively impressive than Winnipeg. So, and Winnipeg's defense is no slouch either. They played really well. Yeah, it's against the Elks, but Bombers played Ottawa twice, Toronto, and now BC. BC was like the one real test, and this game says a lot about Calgary, and I think the game this week is going to say even more about whoever comes out on top.
Here's a quick thing that I've kind of surmised, and it kind of goes along with what you said, Trey. Have we seen Bo Levi Mitchell change his game at all in the last couple of years? Because it seems to me, again, I hate to use this label because it was a Matt Nichols label that was given to him here. Are we seeing Bo go from misguided control for 425 yards to a guy that is comfortable throwing for 225 2 touchdowns and protect the ball. Whereas I think Bo from 4 or 5 years ago would have been, let's throw for 375 and 5 touchdowns and win 47-44. So my question is, have we seen Bo change his game at all in the last number of years? And maybe have the injuries forced him to change his game? Or is that just the natural progression and maturity of Bo Levi Mitchell as he's getting older? Because quite honestly, I see the same thing from his counterpart, what's going to be on Friday night in Zach Collaros. So are we seeing these West quarterbacks get smarter? Because they don't seem to really turn the ball over an awful lot. And I'm just wondering if that's a Bo Levi Mitchell change to his game that we've seen.
I think it just helps having the run game as successful as it's been too, right? Where he doesn't have to do that anymore. And I know there were some good running backs also in Calgary, John Cornish, Jerome Messam, like in the recent years. But then there were a couple of years there where they were kind of finding their next guy. Was it Don Jackson? Was it Kadeem Carey? Well, it's Kadeem Carey, and they've got a great backup in Peyton Logan as well. And that's just opening things up. It's allowing Bo Levi Mitchell to have games like this and still have the offense flourish. And I don't really think in the modern CFL that you need to throw 300-yard games in order to have a successful offensive effort. I mean, look at Zach Collaros' record in a Bombers uniform, 21, 22, and 2 or something like that at this point. And he has 2 games over 300 yards. It's the same thing, Bo Levi Mitchell. I agree. There's, I think, a lot of comparisons to his game now to what we see from Collaros. And he's finding the guys and they're making plays. Hussey's Huddle in the chat mentions, how about Malik Henry leading the league in receiving yards? Who saw that coming this year? We expected Kamar Jordan. We expected Reggie Bagleton to be the top 2 guys for Calgary. We also expected, maybe some input from the other guys stepping up here and there. Calgary finds those diamonds in the rough. But Henry has been insanely good the past couple of games, and we'll get more into talking about him later on in the show. Guys are stepping up, and that's helping Bo Levi Mitchell succeed here. Trey?
No, yeah, I agree, and I don't know what to say about Calgary because I was on Bo Levi saying slow Levi, so I think I'm going to keep my mouth shut for the remainder of the Calgary time. I'll admit I'll eat my words on this, and Calgary did every year what they always do. Everyone hopes they lose, and they don't. So, this again, we talked about last week, BC Winnipeg being a Grey Cup rematch or Western final match or a potential match. This is another one, right? It's crazy. The West could you see any of the 4 top teams in the West really they could make it deep into the playoffs or Grey Cup, right? Could we really make an argument that any of the 4 can't, other than Edmonton, right? So I'm really excited for the West here, and I'm going to stop talking bad about Calgary.
I don't know about you, but I'm envisioning this movie where Saskatchewan crosses over, goes to play in the Grey Cup, goes to play Winnipeg in Regina, and what a story that would be. I realize a lot has to happen, but you know what? One can dream, and if there's any year where that might be realistic, it might be this season, but we have a long ways to go. Really quickly, in about 20 seconds or less from both of you, where does Edmonton go from here, Trey?
Could they tank for Bedard, or is that the NHL? No, I think they'd have to. I never want to say it's over in the CFL, but I'm not sure. Did we talk about how long Trey Ford's injury could be? I might have missed that, or even if it's announced yet. So I think you kind of got to reevaluate there. Again, I like the idea, maybe shut him down, even if it's a 5, 6, 7 week injury, and just go for 2023, new year, give Chris Jones some more time to fine tune that defense and get your offense healthy. But all right.
Yeah, for me as well, Edmonton's got a lot of injuries now too. I mean, a lot of teams have a lot of injuries, but it seems like the Elks are piling them up here on the defensive side of the ball as well. It's a rough start to the year. They're beaten down. It's tough. I want to see Edmonton win a home game this year. The streak is now at 1,000 days plus since they last won a game at home, which is wow. Go out there, put up a big game out on the field, get your fans excited, and then go back out there and do another one after that. Again, I think they'll be better as the season goes along, but I'm not so sure if we're going to see a rotation of quarterback each and every week. And, well, I guess they're doing a good job of kind of thinning that down now. I mean, Trey Ford, unfortunately injured. They got rid of Nick Arbuckle. Now you think it's Cornelius and Kyle Oxley probably rotating in and out, but let's stop the circus maybe. Let's and get a consistent lineup out there is what I think Edmonton needs to do better here.
Fantasy people probably have their heads on a swivel this week because we find out news that Duran Carter is back at practice. So let's see what kind of shenanigans Chris Jones is up to this week. Speaking about it, we've already talked about the shenanigans that led to this football game, which was our second game of the week. But let's talk about the game that actually was played on the field, which saw the Saskatchewan Roughriders move to 4-1 in a 28-13 victory at Mosaic Stadium over the Ottawa Redblacks, who fall to 0-4. Despite what we talked about earlier on, because I don't want to talk about it again, because if you want to hear our thoughts on that scenario, you can rewind this podcast to the beginning if you happen to miss it. But what I was talking about on the field here, Cody Fajardo, Jamal Morrow, the Saskatchewan defense seemingly taking positive steps again en route to this 4-1 record. Somewhat validating their loss, I think, in Montreal with the short week, and now following up with two solid efforts at home. They go to touchdown Atlanta this week against Toronto. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I can't wait to see that game Saturday afternoon. But do the Riders continue to build in my mind, whereas the Redblacks, to me, seem to have kind of dropped off after those first two games against Winnipeg. You looked like you could see something there, and granted, their quarterback went down, Mazzoli, and now all of a sudden there seem to be questions as to who could be Ottawa's quarterback. It's clear that kid that played last year might not be in the plans beyond this week. I don't want to say it's two teams heading in opposite directions here, but boy, oh boy, the Riders will be running away with the division right now if they were in any other division but the West, and they still could finish first. They have games left with Calgary and 3 with Winnipeg for sure. What did you think of it? And we had one comment. I think it's already been displayed. Probably a very well-balanced game, both aspects of the running and passing game. So my question to you guys is, have we seen enough of the Riders to be convinced? And might it be time to kind of say to the Riders, okay, we see you at 4-1. Now's your chance to take on BC, Calgary, and Winnipeg and sort of level up for them, Trey?
Oh, sorry. Did you call me? I missed my name there. Yeah, I think so. This West is a cluster, boys. I don't know how to talk about it, right? Looking at the standings, 5-0, 4-0, 4-1, 3-1. Like, and you're trying to ask me if we've seen enough from Saskatchewan. Are you insane, man? Like, we haven't seen anything from these Western teams, Mike. They haven't barely played each other. Calgary's played Edmonton. Winnipeg played BC once. Who did Saskatchewan play? Edmonton? I don't even know. Like, these guys, they've never really played the big dogs yet other than Winnipeg and BC. Tell me at Labor Day if we've seen enough from Saskatchewan, because those 3 games in September, I think they're all 3 in September. Maybe the third one's in October. Tell me then if we've seen enough from Saskatchewan. Yeah, they're doing great. I think they have a big chance of making the playoffs crossover West. I think week 5, guys, how do we say this, that we've seen enough from him? We're saying that Edmonton still could bounce back potentially. So how do we know about I don't even know, guys. I'm tired of these power rankings and everything. Those 4 teams are number one pretty, like, they're interchangeable. I think Saskatchewan could beat Winnipeg or Calgary. I think BC could beat Winnipeg, Calgary, Saskatchewan. They could all beat each other. It's insane. Just kick out the other 7 teams, and these 4 teams should be in the playoffs, honestly, at this point. So, all right.
Well, I don't know how to sum it up better than you just did there, Trey. But my thing, I'd like to know who abducted Jason Maas and who is standing on that sideline, because that ain't the Jason Maas offense I'm used to seeing. There was so much creativity there in the way they used the run game. Oh, Jamal Morrow, 16 carries, 78 yards. Frankie Hixson gets a 63-yard touchdown run, has 5 carries in there. Like, this offense looks fun. It's fun to watch. It's not what we saw last year, which was Cody Fajardo throw a deep ball every second play and not hit most of them until they brought in Duke Williams. I believe Adam's here in the YouTube chat saying Jason Maas hasn't killed a Gatorade container yet. Yeah, see, this isn't the real Jason Maas. If there's any signs of alien life forms out there, it's the Saskatchewan Roughriders offensive game plan, because it's great, and their defense has stepped up, and their special teams is stepping up here as well. I'm very impressed with what I've seen from the Riders so far here this season.
Guys, there's one solution to fix this mumbo jumbo in the West. You want to hear it? And it might be simple, but I think it's going to be very important.
Oh, no.
God, I hope he was going to say one division.
Hey, I'm not going to say one division. I got my my computer back, so I'm getting used to this touch mouse. Anyway, that being said, there's one solution to this whole mess of how to fix the mumbo jumbo in the West, and it's not one division. For this year anyway. Because I know Cat makes a great point about if you were to lead, what do you do to make the league more competitive? We'll get into that in a minute. There's one solution to this whole thing. It sounds very elementary. Finish first in the West! And you have that game on your home field, and the other 2 can just duke it out. I think, guys, the value of this West Division bye, and now being referred to as Rogers. Nice. But no. In all seriousness, I think this year so far, we're going to learn about the value of that Western Division first overall spot, because it's one less game in this titanic little square of 4. I hate to call it a triangle, because a triangle would be 3 teams, but a square would be kind of opposite of what we're dealing with in the West, a winning square. Okay, that's what we'll call it. Don't give me credit for the name, because it's probably just the dumbest name I've ever come up with. But I've been known to do much stranger things on this podcast. But anyway, in all seriousness, the bye is going to be very important this year. And again, the longer this goes, this just opens up the kettle of fish for one division, which, believe it or not, Edmonton, Hamilton, all those types of teams would still be in the running for the last playoff spot, depending where you did the cutoff. It's just amazing. It's just amazing to me, guys.
I want to talk about the Ottawa side of this game a little bit, because obviously the big news is Jeremiah Mazzoli being out long term here. But like I think you kind of alluded to, Mike, this kind of seems like a step back here for Ottawa. It seemed like, of all the teams struggling out east, I gave them the most credit of the team I thought was still pretty legit, because they played Winnipeg, they played BC, they played Winnipeg twice in there. I mean, Saskatchewan, again, not an easy opponent either. The Red Blacks may have the most difficult schedule thus far, arguably, of any team. You could potentially argue that, I think. But it certainly seemed like a step back here again. Offensively, Jeremiah Mazzoli did throw a touchdown pass, but that's only the second passing touchdown, maybe third offensive touchdown this team has put up in 4 games now at this point for Ottawa. I think they had one bye week in there. What do you do, especially with, with Nick Arbuckle coming in, with Caleb Evans taking over in the meantime, perhaps? What do you do here to spark this offense for a team that seemingly brought in a lot of good pieces this offseason, Trey?
Can you guys hear me? Run the ball. Right? That's it. They had not even 60 yards with William Powell. And then you see the other side, there's over 150 between two guys. And the Rough Riders, and we're talking about Ottawa, but they had this formation, and I don't usually try to get into formation mumbo-jumbo, but I really liked it. It was like a pistol with Fajardo, and he had 3 or 4 guys in the backfield with him. Receivers, running backs, you didn't know who was going to get the ball. And like you said, who is this coach? Who is this Jason Moss offense having 4 running backs in the backfield at one time? And, and guess what? It worked for them. And guess what? Maybe Ottawa, you should do the same. You have William Powell, and you're going to have a guy like Trevor Harris who, yeah, exactly, Adam, man. One thing the Saskatchewan education system teaches uses Trey's theorem to win a football game, man. And that is it. Run the ball. And yeah, you have William Powell. You're going to have some inexperienced quarterback in Caleb Evans, or you're going to have Trevor Harris. Run the damn ball, boys. And that's all I got. And then that's going to open up your receivers, and it's going to tire the defense, and it's how you play football. I don't know why these CFL coaches are handing the ball off less than 15 times in a game, and they're rushing for less than 70, 80, 90 yards. It's super easy to get 100 yards in the CFL. There's at least one team a week doing it. So why isn't all 9 trying? It's ridiculous, guys. So I could have my own rant show about this.
Not to mention it's a Paul Appelese offense, too, that you kind of expect more from in terms of dynamics there, right, Mike?
Yeah, Trey bringing the spices tonight. I like it. No, guys, one thing that's...
It's all the ice cream, boys. It's all the ice cream. I want a huge sugar rush right now, man.
Okay, spices, sugar, you get the drill. The other interesting part of this, to me, what this screams, is certainly looks like to them, the hard part of their schedule is over with. They're 0-4. They're looking at the rest of that division going, we're 1 game back at first place. We have as good a chance as any here to win. That's what this tells me. And they bring it in to be at a relatively low risk, a 4th rounder. For a quarterback that we have seen has had success, and Paul Appelese, offensive genius, we've seen it in Winnipeg. Guys, as bad as this Red Black team has looked through 4 weeks, I'm not ready to write them off just yet, and I have a feeling there might be a playoff game at TD Place Stadium. You heard it right here as part of my hot take.
Yeah, but they're going to be 5-13 and somehow win the East, and that's the
beasts of the East,
right? And it's going to be another Grey Cup. Like we're going to have like a 5-13 against Calgary, Winnipeg, who's going to be like 15-3, and it's going to be disgusting. And somehow the East team's going to win in a snow fest in Mosaic, and then everyone's like, "See, this is why we don't do one division." Sorry, I'm having a day today, guys. I had a rough weekend doing horse racing stuff. I just need to vent.
Trey coming in off the bench and bringing the heat. I love it.
Well, seriously, I also think there's another way to combat that one division matrix. If you're so set on going, if you're so set on this divisional alignment, okay, fine. You know what? Do your divisional alignment, whatever. But reseed the teams within there. Because in the event of a 6 or 7 win team hosted the Eastern semifinal, which is very possible, I think it's a crime that the West Division team has to go on the road to play them. Just me. How would I feel about 10 or 11 wins? And I got to go play a 7-win team in their place for a home playoff game. But that is up for debate. Just because I feel like ranting and adding to the pile tonight. But I think they should reseed the teams according to the teams that make it. If you're so set on this division icon, whatever it is, it is. We don't make the rules. We're just fans. Final game of the week, really quickly. This one shouldn't spice too much controversy, other than it was a vanilla showing or lack thereof. Maybe a vanilla-like showing from the team that thought they were going to beat a vanilla-like offense. Well, either way, a learning lesson for Nathan Ward, for sure. A learning lesson for the BC Lions. But, well, I like to use this line all the time. You're the champs until proven differently. And the Bombers showed why they are one of the best teams in the CFL. And to be honest with you, I think it motivated. What did we hear all of last week, guys, just before we get into this game? The BC Lions and Nathan Ward. The BC Lions and Nathan Ward. The BC Lions are good. The BC Lions are good. Don't think that doesn't get into that Bomber dressing room, short week or not. And then you hear those comments coming off the plane, which Dalton Schoen took very personal. I decided to do something about it. Guys, this showed me that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are for real. They might not win every game. Fair enough. But to go from the East on Monday, play that game, go home, deal with the time change and all that post-travel stuff that you have to deal with. It's 1 day of practice. A lot of video sessions. Go to the other side of the country and put forth your best effort of the season when your first 4 efforts, despite being 4-0, were under the microscope. I think the Bombers took that personal just as much as BC wanted a measuring stick. And you want to talk about an MOP? That was Zach Talaros' best game as a Blue Bomber. And that quarterback on the other side of the field certainly took notice. And hey, not here to write off BC before I turn it over to you, Ryan. The BC Lions have a great football team that shouldn't get deterred from one effort against one of the greatest walking football dynasties that this league has seen in some time. And if the Bombers try to complete the three-peat and do it, it would be a dynasty. But this Bomber winning track that they've been on for the last, since 19 and that Palaus comes in. Trivia question, who's the only quarterback of significance to beat the Blue Bombers since Palaus has been to Winnipeg? His name is Nick Arbuckle. 1 game where Palaus hasn't rested. This is an amazing run. As Bomber fans, but I know we're crapping on this team and they had very little expectations in this game. It's time to get out from under the cupboard, time to get out from under the bed and just embrace the winning that's going on. And BC was served not humble pie because that wouldn't be quite right, but BC just learned what it takes to take what it's going to take to get to that next step. And I'll tell you what, BC is very close to coming and being a very serious contender in the CFL. Ryan?
Yeah, well, first of all, I got to give some credit here. I think it's to Trey. Maybe it was Adam on our preview show this week who said this felt like the week Janarian Grant was going to take one back for the Bombers. And, well, I'm driving home from the cabin on Saturday and got the game on the radio. And what do I hear first play? Boom, Janarian Grant off to the end zone. Ain't nobody got even came close to touching him on that one. What a way to start a football game. And also weird that twice now in one season we've seen that happen, right? Montreal did that with Chandler Worthy a few weeks ago. That set the tone right away. You got the big Jackson Jeffcoat interception. You got the offense on the roll there. I think Dalton Schoen had the touchdown shortly after, make it 14-0. Like it was 21-0 Winnipeg here at the end of the first quarter, and it's certainly not what we were expecting to see from both of these teams in this game. I think a lot of us were leaning BC's direction here. Then all of a sudden, BC started to get themselves back in it a little bit in the second quarter, but then Winnipeg, again, solid second half here to end off the game. So I loved everything I saw here from the Bombers. Good teams, they find their way to get up and play these big games, and they delivered in this one. And I thought all around they were great here, but I'll let Trey talk a little bit more about the specifics of what you liked here from the Bombers.
Well, they did something we haven't seen all year. They combined for 141 rushing yards. Adam's joking in our personal chat about Trey's theorem of rushing. Well, yeah, they finally rushed the ball, and they also did something else. We talked about Henry Malik at Calgary being the leader in receiving, but guess which team has two guys in the top 5 right now? It's the blue and gold. They got Greg Ellingson, who came in, and the Kansas State Wildcat Dalton Schoen. Who the heck is this guy? I remember watching him in the preseason game. So I hope Kenny Lawler's enjoying those big checks in Edmonton, because these two guys are picking up the slack and some in the receiving game. We got a running for 1 week. We got a decent running game. Legs somehow starts making field goals. We don't know. And I said, Grant's going to go for one. This team is, again, I'm not trying to sound too much like a homer because I've been down on them, but this was finally the game that they started showing every aspect pretty perfectly. I don't know if we could really pick apart much other than 2 minutes before halftime. The defense got a little lazy, but they, sometimes that just happens. And BC does have a very talented offense, right? So kudos to all these guys. I think I actually don't mind this whole 3 running back thing they're doing. I don't care how you pick up the yards. You got to pick them up. Caleros is playing smart football, not throwing many picks. And then you're going to always have great special teams play when Coach Osh is your coach, right? So turn it back to you guys. Whoever's next, I think it's Mike.
There we go. Obviously, I don't have Rogers. Anyway, yeah, I agree. I think we need to see some creativity from offenses. This 3 running back thing is not what I saw in the cards. It leaves the open discussion amongst OCs about who Winnipeg's number 1 running back might be. You look at the distribution, pretty even, yards pretty even. All of them bring a different style. Craig McRae brings a Nick Dembski type of style. Brady Oliveira is that sort of bruiser. When you need 5-6 yards, he can power forward. The other thing that I noticed is Johnny Augustine is that shot of explosiveness that you need. It's two to three, depending on what week you look at it, different style of running backs. And it's going to cause a lot of extra preparation. But another interesting thing that I just want to mention and kind of piggyback off what Trey said, and we could kind of both discuss this. In this game, every game the Bombers seem to have 2 different guys that lead the charge at wide receiver. It's Dominic. It was Bailey, and it was Wolotarski in Toronto. This game, it was Dalton Schoen, who put on a schön effort, schön being nice in German. I was told that Schoen's name in German is actually schön, which is wonderful, nice in German. But also Greg Ellingson. I mean, you tell me that based on what we've seen with Kenny Lawler's performance in Edmonton, that the Bombers aren't getting more bang for their buck from a guy like Greg Ellingson, who's that second down clutch. You need a big catch, he's going to get it. And all of a sudden, they got this firecracker in Dalton Schoen, who made some nice catches, who shows no fear, who, if he keeps this up, might not only be Rookie of the Year, but might be one and done here in Winnipeg as far as NFL opportunities go. But when was the last time we could say we had an impact receiver at rookie from a guy that really had to earn a spot in rookie camp to be able to do that, which is really good. Now the other side of this, Nathan Work making some amazing throws, including another 125-yard plus game. I think he wound up with 142 yards or something to that nature from Dominic Grimes, and a running game from BC. But in this game, seemed a little bit non-existent. We saw that Butler kind of game where he had that 4 touchdown game in week 1 and was injured, I think, in week 2 and some of week 3, if I'm not mistaken. But the BC Lions were not able to manhandle the ball or handle the ball, I guess, with their running game. And Winnipeg was able to chew up a lot of clock by using one of their 3 running backs. What do you think BC goes from here? Because personally, Ryan, I think it's just a blip on the radar. But could BC take any lessons from Winnipeg? And BC is always trying to become Winnipeg. Much like when Winnipeg was in BC's shoes, they're trying to become the next Calgary. We're trying to, be that team, but, that next great team to always beat the, to use a hockey reference, to beat Tampa Bay or to beat Colorado. Winnipeg is the hunted right now. BC's shown that they have the propensity to be there. But Ryan, what's it going to take for them to get to that next step, that consistent step of, okay, this wasn't just 3 wins. There's some validity behind that. And if you're Rick Campbell, Ryan, how do you sell that? Okay, this was a blip on the radar, but if you go back and play in your first 3 games largely the way you did that the rest of the year, and you still have 2 more cracks at Winnipeg, how do you stay positive despite this being that one blip on the radar? Because to me, this isn't, oh no, BC's in big trouble. In fact, I see it the other way around.
Yeah, for me, I kind of said this on the preview show last Wednesday that I think this is going to be an exciting game between these 2 teams, but I don't know if this game will necessarily tell us anything dramatic about either of them. We saw very good things from Winnipeg, and do I think they're a little bit more legit after a statement game like this? Yeah, I do. But do I think this is doom and gloom for BC after this blowout loss? No, I don't. I think, in fact, I liked what I saw still in some of this game from the Lions. You talk about things to rally around if you're, Rick Campbell and you're talking to the team. You look at those couple minutes before halftime where Nathan Rourke, who had a very slow start to this game, threw a couple dimes down the field. You mentioned Dominic Grimes. Josh Pearson had a long touchdown pass. Beautiful throws there. Got the Lions right back into it. This shows me, the second half kind of got away from them as well. The time of possession was a big problem. I think that's why we didn't see as much James Butler in this one, because 21-0 start early in the game. Well, then you're starting to maybe not run the ball quite as much here. But I still saw some good things from BC. It seems like a team that's, a bit of a spunky team that's going to fight for a lot of wins here yet this season. And Nathan Rourke, arguably first true test of adversity. Maybe it was the game before against Ottawa, but I thought he still had a decent game, 278 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. You don't like those necessarily. But if we're talking about that being a bad game for Nathan Rourke, I feel like that's still a decent game for a lot of quarterbacks around the CFL. So I'm not low on the Lions after this one. I think they're going to bounce back just fine here in short order coming out of it. Interesting thing is that they're on another bye week this week, right? So now coming out of this loss, how do they prepare coming out of the bye week is what's going to be interesting to me. Trey, what do you think of what we saw from the Lions here?
Yeah, to answer Mike's question, if there's anything smaller than a blip, that's what this is going to be. I think it's it's going to be the game, because they play twice at the end of the season. This game's not going to matter by October, right? These 2 teams are going to be completely different teams by then. Winnipeg could lose the next 10 and BC could win the next, or vice versa. Anything could happen, right? So I think this is a smaller blip. They are lucky. They get another bye week. Well, they're lucky now to get a bye week, but they're going to miss out on it later in the year, I guess. And I believe their next game's Hamilton at home, and Hounds is no real prize either, so hopefully they get a little bit of a tune-up game before they go into Mosaic the week after, right? So I still think BC's got a good shot at first, second in the division, and like I think it's rolling dice at this point. We should just be flipping coins to see which team should be first right now. If the season was almost over, right? If this was a USFL season of 6 weeks, it's so hard to tell. And no, I don't think BC's in any trouble here. It's going to be a shame that one of these 4 teams are going to be fourth. It really is, and we need to have a special show about the one division or something, because that's an hour talk right there, right? So. Real shame that Saskatchewan, BC, Calgary, or Winnipeg are going to be fourth. But yeah, BC's fine. BC's in a good place. They're going to keep going, and their crowd looks like they're staying the same and keep going. And yes, Ryan, we'll move on to betting. Don't worry about it. I see that. Yeah, we'll move on. Let's go.
One more thing quickly that I want to jump in on, and this had nothing to do with this game, if you guys don't mind, is it's the schedule. The Bombers have not had a bye. Saskatchewan has not had a bye. Yet you have Toronto, and yet you have BC that after this week will have had 2 of their 3 bye weeks. It's strange to me. But again, I would also argue that BC's byes have come at exactly the right time now. I don't know if you want to, sit on your most lopsided loss of the season going into a bye, but it's interesting. But more teams have had 1 bye. Some teams have had 2 byes before. 2 teams have not had 1 bye. So, as a master scheduler for a hockey league here in town, I don't understand it. I personally would not build a schedule like what they're building, but I'd love to sit down with the CFL master scheduler and just see the intricacies of everything. Going forward, and it's just interesting to me that these byes are so kind of sporadic. We have Calgary, even on 1 bye. Calgary then goes on a bye after playing Winnipeg, and then sees them again in Calgary. So you're at 3 teams potentially in the next couple of weeks that are at 2 byes already. While Winnipeg and Saskatchewan have yet to have 1, and there might be a couple other teams. But have not had a bye yet. It's just really interesting to me how the intricacies of the schedule, and I think it screams we need 10 teams to not only balance the divisions out, but to eliminate this bye week distribution, which is a little bit odd to say the least, and how Toronto has a bye week after playing Winnipeg, yet Winnipeg has to play a short week, yet Toronto goes out east to play touchdown Atlanta this weekend. Like there's a lot of things that don't make sense, and I'm wondering if that's going to be to the benefit of Winnipeg and Saskatchewan down the stretch, is to have some bye weeks when presumably you're more banged up, to be able to benefit the rest versus we've clearly seen that the Bombers can come off short week. I just think in general that the schedule is very interesting this year, as far as the bye weeks go. But that was kind of just my 2 cents from that whole scenario.
My answer is, if you look at the teams on the last 4 weeks of byes, it's all the Western teams except for BC. And what does BC and Southern Ontario have in common? They're nice in October. That's my honest answer, right? It's the 4 West teams. I believe, looking quickly at the schedule, Edmonton has the last week. Winnipeg has 2nd last week. Calgary has 3rd last week. Fourth last week in Saskatchewan. Yeah, so it's the coldest places to play in October. Have the byes the last 4 weeks. I think that's my simplest, and I think it has to do with they schedule the divisions playing each other more near the end, right? Yeah. So the Western teams has to sit out if you do that. So I think it's hand in hand. Now, I know Toronto isn't, and some of the Southern Ontario teams aren't drawing the big crowds in October, but I think the assumption is they're going to have nice weather down there, when in Winnipeg, if the Bombers have already clinched a playoff spot in October, we're not really going into a -30 game in October. You know what I mean? Like,
especially on a Jets game day, right?
Yeah, in the end, you got things like, yeah.
It's also interesting, right? Because the Bombers are in a stretch, I think, of 6 of 7 on the road. So, they played their last 2 Now they come home for this one game here against Calgary, then they go on the road for 3, I think it is, before coming home, and then going on the road for 2 more. So yeah, it's a very interesting schedule that way. And at the end of the day, guys, I say this to my teams all the time, but have a gripe about the schedule. You're playing games. It's all that really matters. At the end of the day, everybody gets to 18 games and has relatively the same schedule within your division, so it all evens out. Um, I don't know. I just found it more of an interesting fact, more so than any entry. I hadn't even taken your thought into consideration. That was a astute observation by yourself. But again, we'll see. We'll see. I still think it's going to benefit to have a buy in the back half of the season versus having your buy now. But we'll see. It's all part of the 18-game odyssey that is the CFL, with lots of twists and turns.
Well said. Yes, looking forward to seeing how things play out throughout the remainder of the season. Let's get into taking a look at our picks and our fantasy league results for week number 5 in the CFL. Every week on our preview show, Trey, Adam, and myself, we make our weekly picks. We talk through fantasy options, etc. How did we do on the picks this week, Trey? I'm thinking it wasn't great.
Sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. I thought I had the file up, and I don't here. See, I wasn't prepared. I thought I was sitting out tonight. That's right here. We did not do good. The first game of the week, I took Edmonton, and Ryan and Adam both took Calgary. Let me see here. I think it was 3.5. Yeah, it was 3.5. I did not get that one, as if they won by like 50, or it felt like. So, yeah, I lost the first game, and Adam and Ryan won the first game. Second game, Ottawa. We all took Ottawa +6 over Saskatchewan. Again, didn't do too good. All got that one wrong. And then the end of the week, we all took BC -3.5. And again, the Bombers showed us that we shouldn't bet against them right now. So after that, Ryan's at 8-11. I'm at 9-10, and Mr. Farmer, man, got the inside. I don't know. Does the wheat tell him who's going to win? I don't know what happens out there, but he's got 10-9 right now, Adam. So something's going on out there in that field. I don't know. Maybe he's got some, I don't know, the traffic whisperer out there telling him the picks.
Yes, Adam crushing us this week. Well, I guess me and him tied at 1-2 records, but he does have the overall lead on the season in that regard in our weekly picks. In the CFL Podcast Fantasy League, Trey, Adam, myself, playing alongside 14 other CFL podcasters. In the first edition of Canadian Football Countdown Civil War, I take this one. I beat Adam. Thank you, Dalton Schoen. Thank you, Frankie Hixson. Couple cheap value plays, taking the win in that one. I improved to 5-0 on the season, undefeated still. All I do is win. Meanwhile, Adam drops to 3-2. Trey, you did fall to Brazilian tie from the 2-0 CFL podcast, dropping to 2-3 on the season there. Follow all the fantasy results at CFL Pod Fantasy on Twitter. Check out all the other great podcasts involved there as well. In our little fantasy league, we did our draft preseason, and we've been playing every week. We have a first-time weekly winner. Mike puts up 115 points this week. Adam came in second at 81.4. Trey in third at 72.4. And me, well, when the BC Lions aren't putting up 30 fantasy points each, it really hurts my lineup, and I finished with 57.9. Overall totals on the season, Adam in first at 494.1. I am in second at 436.8. Mike moves into third spot at 387.7, and Trey in the rear with 358.5. Mike, what do you have to say for your dominant victory here this week?
Yeah, I think I put this in the group chat. It's a minor Christmas miracle, but I was able to get pulled off. I know I had Dalton Schoen and Dominic Grimes in my lineup, but boy, can we all shed a few tears about my quarterback situation. For context, everybody, I released Dane Evans, added Trey Ford, thinking I would fare quite well. 2 drives in, 5-something fantasy points later, he doesn't make it out of the game. And then, great, I got Jeremiah Mazzoli as my other quarterback. And, well, you all know what happened there. His season is over for the next 10 to 12 weeks. So I am general manager Darrow is on the hunt for a quarterback. And what conclusion has he come up with? Stay tuned.
Hey, you were the one who petitioned for injured reserve spots preseason. You should have pitched for 5. Maybe we would have given it to you because you seem like you need them with the number of guys going down. Adam just messaged us and said the Gophers whisper the picks for him. So that's your answer there, Trey. What do you make of this week of CFL fantasy and your results this week?
I need to do better. That's all I got. I need to do better all around. Betting, fantasy. The only thing I do good on this show is have rants and find awesome hats and eat ice cream, boys. You know, that's all I am.
It's better than anything else the rest of us do. So let's get into our players of the week here for week number 5. Let's take a look at our players of the week. I'll pull them up here on the screen for those watching the video with us. Adam is first up on the list for players of the week. He chose running back Frankie Hixson of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. 5 carries, 92 yards, 1 touchdown, a catch and 2 yards. Oh yeah, and he is the backup running back in Saskatchewan. Getting involved there, making an impact, and bringing some life to that Riders run game and that Riders offense. So kudos to Frankie Hixson for a nomination of Player of the Week. Mike, who do you got?
Well, my player of the week, quite simply, because this guy was due a breakout game. It's Janarian Grant of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers for running back to kickoff. It seems like this is an occasion that should be celebrated every single time because it rarely ever happens. The poor contest winner that should have won $1 million but had it washed out because of a holding call. Really something quite remarkable. Janarian Grant, 7 returns for a grand total of 167 yards, including a 97-yarder to open up the game. For me, this is just player of the week, quite simply on the basis of it doesn't happen very often, and it should be celebrated more. So Janarian Grant, you get my player of the week. For just having a great game and just about running back to such a moment, which was called back for a hold.
All right, my player of the week is wide receiver Malik Henry of the Calgary Stampeders. 6 catches, 6 targets, 150 yards, 1 touchdown. We got the comment earlier in the chat, league's leading receiver. Who saw that coming? He did it back-to-back games against the Elks, putting up massive performances. Including 1 really long touchdown. He made a nice move, took it to the house there. He's making a name for himself as Bo Levi Mitchell's go-to guy, even though they did bring in Reggie Bagleton late last season. They've still got Kamar Jordan. Mad respect to Malik Henry, and I think is a large part of the resurgence we've seen of Bo Levi Mitchell. So I give him my nod as player of the week for week number 5. Trey, how about you?
Boys, the ice cream's not done yet. We're going to have a little bit more for the player of the week here. That vanilla offense in Winnipeg. We're going to Zach Collaros. Man, you didn't put everything I put up there, but that's okay. 23 for 30, 76.7 completion rate, 288 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a Patrick Mahomes-style throw. But Patrick Mahomes didn't complete it in that Super Bowl, I don't believe, but Calero sure did. Man, that guy looked like an MOP out there, and he looked like a quarter. That was a game where you look like as a quarterback who's 22-2 or whatever his record is in the last 24. Zach Calero, this one's for you, man. I'm gonna eat ice cream all night, boys.
I love it, Trey. I love it. Honorable mentions as well to Dalton Schoen, I think, deserves it. 8 catches, 117 yards, 2 touchdowns. Dominic Rhymes, 6 catches, 136 yards, 2 touchdowns. Cam Judge had a massive game on defense for the Stampeders this week as well. 2 fumble recoveries, a sack. Bunch of guys that could have made it in our players of the week, but did not make the official cut here. Let's take a look at our power rankings for week number 5. Always a fun part of the show here as well. Let me take a look. Let's take a look at mine here first. I had Winnipeg at number 1. Hard to argue that after their big win this week. Calgary at number 2, undefeated still as well. Huge win over the Elks. BC drops to number 3, but I still think they're a very good football team. The Riders still 4. We talked about it earlier. Those top 4 teams out west kind of being the pinnacle of the CFL right now. Then we get into a little more troublesome territory with the picks here. Toronto at 5 for me. They almost came back and beat the Bombers. I think they have shown some good things here still. Montreal at 6. They were on a bye week here as well. Ottawa I put at 7. I put Ottawa above Edmonton here despite having one less win because of their chances of getting back into things in the division, right? Ottawa 1 win out of first place in the East right now. They bring in Nick Arbuckle. That helps as well. Edmonton, rough game this week. Don't really know what direction they're going in at quarterback. And then Hamilton still stays at number 9. They were on a bye week here. Mike, what do your power rankings look like this week? You're muted, Mike.
We have a new change in regard. Winnipeg, reluctantly my number 1. And I say reluctantly because you could easily put an argument for Calgary being number 1, but I gave it to Winnipeg just on the impressiveness of the 2 games in 5 days. Calgary remains undefeated, so therefore they get number 2. BC, first loss of the year, 3-1, they get number 3. Saskatchewan, number 4. Toronto, number 5. Now, guys, I don't know about you, and I think Ryan, you may have touched on this. I really have trouble with my rankings from 5 to 9. I feel like this, could really be thrown in a blender or in an ice cream bucket, and you scoop one out, and that's where they are for that week. No, but in all seriousness, 5 through 9, very interchangeable, depending on what happens. Also, really hard for me to rank these just because 3 teams were on bye last week, and the team that played last week didn't win, and they're now winless. So, yeah, it's kind of based on where I had them for season expectations. So I don't know. It's a thankless job, and quite honestly, the part of the show where there could even be the most debate, not only amongst fans, but amongst us as panelists, which is why this is one of my favorite segments of the show.
Well, let's take a look at what Adam had for his rankings. He had Winnipeg number 1, Calgary 2, BC 3, Saskatchewan 4. Seems like we're all in agreement thus far. Toronto and Montreal at 5 and 6. Edmonton at number 7, Ottawa at 8, and Hamilton at 9. So the 2 winless teams there still at the bottom of the rankings in Adam's list here. Trey, what do you have here for your Week 5 power rankings?
Well, yeah, we're going to have the 2 undefeateds on top, but I give a slight edge to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers currently. Yeah, big game, though, on Friday. Big game. Might have to have some wobblies at this one just in case the Bombers lose. But, yeah, 3-4. Again, I'm going to give BC the edge just because BC's lost to Winnipeg. I give them more respect than Saskatchewan's loss to Montreal. And then, yeah, 5, 6, 7, I'm going to say is trouble for me. I think it's clearly Edmonton's a slight better than Hamilton, but obviously Mike is the only one of us that disagrees with that. But yeah, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, I think, again, it's just rolling dice on those 3. And Edmonton, I'm going to give a slight edge to because they at least have a win, and Hamilton's the bottom feeders right now.
That's it for our Week 5 power rankings here, and I think that pretty much does it for our Week 5 recap. Lots of breaking news this week, and lots of fun to talk about, even though there were only 3 games to discuss. Let's take a look at what's coming up here next on the podcast. Wednesday night, July 13th, 9 p.m. Winnipeg time, 8 p.m. Saskatchewan, other time zones accordingly. It's our Week 6 preview. Trey, Adam, myself will be here. We'll preview the storylines for the upcoming games. We'll talk CFL fantasy options, try to get back on track with our picks this week. So you can look forward to that Wednesday night. And then next week, Monday, July 18th, same time, same place, our Week 6 recap, just like we did here tonight. Of course, you can catch both of those live on all of our platforms. YouTube, search the Canadian Football Countdown there. Facebook.com/CF Countdown Pod. At CF Countdown Pod on Twitter. Twitch.tv/CF Countdown Pod. And Game Time TV YouTube page. Shout out to our presenting sponsor, Game Time TV. Learn more at Facebook.com/Game Time TV MB. Want to follow us on social media? You can do so. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at CF Countdown Pod. And make sure you check out all of the other great shows from around the Canadian Football Podcast Network at CF Pod Network on Twitter for all of those as well. Mike, any final thoughts, and where can people find you on social media?
Final thoughts. I'm loving the CFL through 4 game weeks for sure. Actually, sorry, 5 game weeks. Week 6 preview coming up. Great content as always by the team. I just wanted to shed some light on a Wednesday. I know I usually promote Game Time TV, but I'm going to take this moment to preview a program on Game Time TV, which will be on the air sometime before the preview team takes the air, recapping the opening day of NHL free agency, which is set to begin on Wednesday. Previewing some of the moves already. The Pittsburgh Penguins have signed a long-term agreement with Ricard Raquel of 6 years, so that's going to be interesting what happens with the Evgeny Malkin sweepstakes. It seems like the new era there in Pittsburgh. We'll also dive into the Toronto Maple Leafs. Some say questionable acquisition of Matt Murray. But I'll explain on Wednesday's show why it's not so controversial. So stay tuned for that, because this is going to be unbelievable. It is also the Ultimate Hockey Show's season wrap-up. No, that was a bit long on Game Time Tuesday, though. You can find us on Facebook. All the details on Facebook, facebook.com/Game Time TV MB. And some news for Game Time TV fans. The website is ready. It's going to be released next Monday. So stay tuned for that. In all seriousness, though, you can find me on Twitter at Mike Carroll, probably whining and complaining about something that happens in the world of sport, Blue Bomber related. But in all seriousness, love the interaction with everybody. And I know I don't say it enough for my Game Time TV subscribers, but it also adds up to members of this community as well for the CFC, Canadian Football Countdown, little band of diehards we like to have and new fans. The show wouldn't be what it is without fan interaction and participation. So it is the highlight of my week to sit here at 9 o'clock on Mondays and watch you guys on Wednesdays and see all of the interaction that happens. It is a very interesting community that likes to join together to talk about whether it's hockey or the CFL. Both passionate fan bases, and that's part of why we have these forums to allow open, respectful discussion, and that is the heart of what Game Time and the Canadian Football Countdown, by extension, are here to do. We may not agree with each other's tastes, but it is a place to freely express our opinions on the matter at hand. So I just wanted to give, I know, a long mumbo jumbo rant for late in the show, but I just want to say thank you for everything that you guys have all done to keep us on the air and the opinions. It's really refreshing to see the new people that tune us in, whether it's live here now or on the podcast. So I know I'm doing very sentimental tonight. As fired up as I was earlier in the evening. A basket case of emotion, which is fine. Good night, everybody.
Well said, Mike. Well said. Couldn't have put it better. Shout out to everybody who has joined us in the chat live here tonight. We had a lot of great comments. We always appreciate those. Shout out to those of you watching later on, listening later on. If you have questions, comments after the fact, you can send them to us on Twitter and Facebook and all of that as well. Trey, where can people find everything you got going on these days?
Well, if you want to keep hearing my hot takes on everything and eating ice cream and everything like that, that's at Trey MB Harness. Yeah, I'm all fired up because it's horse racing season for me. I had a great weekend doing that. Unfortunately, I really hate it that we're not live streaming the next few weeks of racing, but we will once we move to Winnipeg. So if you can't make it down to the track, you can always watch online. If you follow me, I'll show you there. Because unfortunately, I didn't do good in football, but I had the only winning Pick 4 ticket in Miami. My counterpart, the great Mike Williams, who's a great horse owner and handicapper, got it wrong. He's been in the industry 50 years, and I've been doing my job for 3, and I got my Pick 4 right. So just got to give him that. He's not going to watch this, so I can talk smack as much as I want. But yeah. That's about it at Trey MB Harness. And make sure we follow our buddy Adam Stewart 1 if you want some farming tips. And thank you to everybody. Since joining this show, people got me to 500 followers. So I'm happy about that too. I like round numbers. I have OCD.
Yes. Go follow Trey on Twitter if you want to talk more about whether Brandon Banks catches touchdowns or not as well. He loves having that conversation. Of course, great follow there. You can find me on Twitter at CooperTrooper42 as well. And one talk CFL, CFL fantasy, all that fun stuff. Reality TV. Loved the premiere of the Challenge USA last week. I really enjoyed that. Big Brother season not starting off on a hot note, but maybe we'll get there yet. But yeah, looking forward to all of that fun stuff and all of the CFL every single week. Whatever podcast platform you're listening on, we appreciate it if you do all the fun things such as like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, share the show with your friends, help us grow the show. We always appreciate that. And on behalf of our panel here tonight, Michael Garrell, Trey Colbeck, I'm Ryan Coop saying thank you for listening. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.